Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Mimi Dua Titan of the Lily's Bakery. In today's video, I will be decorating a two-tiered three-house cake. So you just watch and enjoy. First, I'll roll out my fondant, and in today's cake decorating, I'll be covering my cake with fondant using the paneling method. So here you could see me roll out some fondant to cover the top of my 8-inch cake. Once I'm satisfied with the fondant that is being rolled, I'll carry it and place it on top of my cake like so. And then I'll use my smoothener to smoothen the top of the cake. Once I'm done with that, I'll set it aside and move to roll another fondant to cover the sides of the cake. I'll roll out this fondant until it is wide enough to go round the sides of the cake. At this point, I'm satisfied with the rolling, and so I'll carry another board, apply corn flour, and cover the top of the cake while I roll my fondant to cover to my cake. So the board in which I applied corn flour, I'll use it to flip my cake. This was done in order not to make the cake board stick to the fondant. So here I lifted the board from the base, and then I'm covering my fondant on the sides of the cake. And this method is called the paneling method. It is easy and straightforward. And once everything has gone round, I'll use my smoothener to push the fondant closer to the sides of the cake so as it wouldn't fall off. Once I'm done using the smoothener round, I'll carry my cutting tool or my mini shovel and cut off the excess. As you could see, as I've done here. Once I cut off the excess, I'll use edible glue to glue the sides, to glue both sides of the fondant so that it will come together perfectly. Here I'm using my smoother to make it stick properly, and then here I'll use my smoother around the cake, and while I'm smoothing I'm pushing it down to enable, I'm pushing the fondant down to enable it stick to the fondant that was covered on the top part of the cake. What I'm doing will enable it stick together and give it a sharp edge. And once the top fondant has been glued or has stuck to the fondant that is being placed by the sides of the cake, I'll proceed to trim off the excess, as you could see me doing the video. After trimming the excess from the base, which is the initial top, I'll now begin to trim off the one hanging at the top, which will be our actual base. It is important to trim this part because it will help your cake sit properly on the cake board, and then the height of the cake will also be perfect on every side. Once I'm done trimming off the excesses, I will now turn my cake back to its normal position. And here I'm trying to make sure that my board is placed in the right position, as my cake will be centered in the middle of the board. And once that is done, I'll flip my cake like so. And guys, our cake is perfectly covered. I'll push off the leftover corn flour that are sticks to the fondant. You can always brush this off. And here I've moved to the top tier of the cake. I'm repeating the same process I did with the previous cake, where I'll be rolling my fondant, but here there are going to be a little bit of changes. You remember we're making a tree house, so the cake I'll be covering now would be, it's structured like a house. So here I'm using my brick cutter to make prints over the fondant so that it would look like a house with bricks. I'll go over the fondant with this cutter until the entire fondant is having a bricks texture. While using this cutter, I'm making sure that I follow the pattern on a straight line so as all sides of the brick will look even. Once I'm done, I'll trim off the excess and then properly reshape the fondant so as it will be exactly the size of our house cake. Here I'm using my tape to measure the fondant so that I will get an exact size. And once I've done that, I'll begin to place my fondant on the sides of the cake. Once I place my fondant, I'll press to it so as it could properly stick to the cake, and I'll use my smoother to aid me with this process. Once I've properly sticked it, I'll carry my cutting tool and trim off the excess hanging by the sides. And while I trim off, I'll use my smoother as a support, holding the fondant so as it could give me a clean cut. Once I'm done with the other side, I'll proceed to the next side. After I'm done covering the sides of our house cake, I'll now begin to roll my pink fondant to use as the roof of this house cake. I'll roll it until I get the desired shape that is wide enough to cover the roof of the cake. After rolling my pink icing, I'll use my tape to measure my fondants and my cake to make sure that it's equal so as I would have a perfect roof. Once I get the desired measurements, I'll trim off the excess and proceed to do the perfect finishing. After I'm satisfied with the size, I will use my silicone mat to make impressions on my fondant like so. As I wouldn't want my roof to look plain, this mat will help make those impressions on the roof of the cake. After I'm done covering and making the roof of the cake, I'll begin to stick on the door and windows of the house. So next off, I'm here with my brown fondant that I've already rolled out. I'll press it to this silicone mat that has a wooden effect. I'll press it so that it will give me that wooden effect, and then I'll use the fondant in place of a 3 on my cake. I'll trim off the excess and reshape it so as it would look more like a tree. Now I will apply some edible glue on my brown fondant and I'll stick it to the cake. I'll stick it like so, and it will serve as a tree on the cake before we add the branches. After I properly trim it to be leveled with the size of the cake, I'll begin to roll out little brown fondants. I'll roll it out and cut and glue onto the sides of the tree so as to make the branches of the tree. I will repeat this process until I'm done making all the stems. Now I'm sticking some flower cutouts that I made with a mini flower cutter, or I could still call it a petal cutter. So I'll stick this flowers around the stems. I'll go over this process until I've exhausted all the flowers. What I'm using to stick it is edible glue. You can also use water. So here the cake will be needing a support so as the top tier would comfortably sit on it without having any issues whatsoever. So here I'm going to insert some door rods that will help support the structure of the cake while the top tier sits on the cake as a top tier. Dwelling is very important when making tiered cakes. It helps keep the structure of your cake and help give support to the cake that will be sitting on top, so as your cake will not collapse during delivery or during setup. So always consider doing your cake when it's a tiered cake. So here I'm applying some buttercream that will help our top tier to stick to the bottom tier. I've also attached a center dowel that will help hold and stick both cakes together. And here you can see me carefully placing the top tier to the bottom tier, and as you can see, this top tier is basically sitting on the dowels. It's sitting on the dowel rods. After arranging it, I'll move on to add my little decorations on the cake. These are some mini roses which I handcrafted that I'm adding to the cake. And some fondant butterflies that I use my fondant cutter to cut from. I'll make all these additions to the cake to bring it to life. So what I'm doing next is hand brushing the base of the cake with some edible green color to give it a grass effect. I'll go around the base of the cake doing the same thing so as it would give us the grass looking effect. So here I'm coloring the board so as it will have a similar color with the cake. And that's why I've gone in with a green and pink tone. And then I'm adding more flowers to the board. I'll add these flowers and also add a butterfly to the board and some other little decorations. So here to make the flowers bloom a little more, I'm adding in some sugar balls that will make it look beautiful and vibrant. For the final stage, in order to make the cake look vibrant, I'll steam my cakes. I'll steam the top tier and the bottom tier and make sure that it's giving me a vibrant and clean background. And of course, I've added the name of the celebrant to the cake. And then I'm also adding some little rocks to the cake. And guys, our cake is 98% done. I hope you've enjoyed watching the entire process. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. If you have any questions, please do not forget to comment down below your questions. I'm here to answer them all. So you just make sure to write down your questions. I'll answer all of them. I would also love to know where you're watching from. So please do well to let me know where you're watching from. And in order to finish up the imperfections, I'll pipe some buttercream onto the area of the roof where there are slight openings. I'll pipe on there some buttercream so as there'll be no opening there again whatsoever. And once I'm done with the stage, our cake will be done and ready. So if you enjoy this one more time, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Do have a great day. Bye bye.